Inside Death Row with Trevor McDonald. Double EP feature times true crime documentary. Main character, Marcus Webb times location, H Unit, Oklahoma State Penitentiary. The cell is 6 feet wide and 9 feet long. Marcus Webb knows every inch of it. He has traced the cracked paint above his bunk 4,000 times. He has memoized the hiss of the ventilation system, the clank of the distant gate, the shuffle of boots on concrete at 3:47 in the morning. Tonight, he is not sleeping. In 72 hours, the state of Oklahoma intends to end his life by lethal injection. He will be escorted from this cell, strapped to a gurney, and administered 3 drugs in sequence until his heart stops beating. Marcus Webb is 38 years old. He has spent the last 11 years inside H Unit. And on this particular night, 3 days before his scheduled execution, something extraordinary is about to unfold inside these walls. Something the world is about to pay attention to. Sir Trevor McDonald has spent over 50 years as a journalist. He has interviewed dictators, warlords, and heads of state in circumstances that would unnerve most people. But standing in the narrow corridor of H Unit, 12 steps from Marcus Webb's cell, he would later describe this moment as unlike anything he had experienced before. "You walk through those doors," McDonald says, his voice measured and low, "and the first thing you understand is that these are not monsters. These are men. Men living inside a silence so complete, it becomes its own kind of violence." What the cameras captured during the next 72 hours inside this facility would disturb even the most experienced corrections officers on duty. Because this was not simply the story of one man's final days on Earth. It was a story that forced everyone inside these walls, guards, chaplains, administrators, and wardens alike, to confront a question that none of them wanted to be the one to answer. The state of Oklahoma says Marcus Webb is a cop killer. The jury agreed in 2013. The appeals courts have agreed every time his lawyers challenged it. In 11 years of legal battle, not one judge has granted relief. But 3 weeks before his execution date, a letter arrived at this prison, not addressed to his legal team, not filed with the court. It was addressed personally to Marcus Webb, from a man named Gerald Briggs, a detective who worked the original case and had not spoken publicly in over a decade. The letter was 2 pages long. Prison staff intercepted it, as they intercept all incoming mail. A copy was made. What that letter contained began moving quietly up the chain of command, from a male officer to a sergeant, from a sergeant to the warden, before anyone decided what to do about it. Marcus Webb would not see that letter for another 48 hours, but its existence had already changed everything. This documentary was given 72 hours of unprecedented access inside H Unit. What the cameras captured was not what any of us expected to find. Over the course of those 3 days, you will witness Marcus Webb's final meals, his final phone calls, and his final conversation with the chaplain. You will witness a corrections officer break protocol in a way that will end his career. You will witness the moment, caught on camera, when Marcus Webb first hears what that letter actually contains. Some of what follows is deeply unsettling. All of it is real, because inside these walls, in the hours before a state-sanctioned execution, the line between justice and something far more troubling becomes very difficult to see clearly. This is H Unit. This is Death Row. And this is the story of Marcus Webb, and the 72 hours that nobody inside this building will ever forget. Let us begin. If this story already has you gripped, and we are barely through the door of H Unit, hit the subscribe button right now. Every single week on this channel, we go inside the cases and the institutions that the mainstream news cycle walks past. The stories where the official version and the actual version are not the same thing. Subscribe, hit the notification bell, and you will never miss an episode. Now, it is 6 o'clock Thursday morning. Marcus Webb has just been woken for breakfast, and in 6 to 6 hours, the state of Oklahoma intends to execute him. Let's keep going. Before this cell, before the conviction, before the handcuffs clicked shut in a parking lot on the eastern edge of Tulsa, Oklahoma, Marcus Webb was someone entirely different. He was the eldest of 4 children, raised by a single mother in North Tulsa. He worked construction during the week and coached youth football on Saturday mornings. His neighbors described him as the kind of man who shoveled your driveway without being asked. His pastor said he never missed a Sunday service in 12 years. In the summer of 2012, 2 police officers were shot during a routine traffic stop on Route 66. Marcus Webb's vehicle was placed at the scene. His fingerprints were recovered from a weapon found nearby. The prosecution built their case in 9 months. The trial lasted 11 days. His sister, Lisa, who has visited him every single month for 11 years without exception, still cannot explain how the man who refused to kill a spider in her kitchen was convicted of shooting 2 officers execution style in the back of the head. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Warden Dale Nichols has overseen 14 executions during his career. He says he does not dwell on that number. What he focuses on, what he has always focused on, is process. His job, as he frames it, is to ensure that every step of the procedure is carried out correctly, humanely, and with institutional dignity. He opens Marcus Webb's file on his desk. It is thick. 11 years of incident reports, medical evaluations, appeal correspondence, legal filings, and behavioral assessments are contained in those folders. According to every page of that file, Marcus Webb has not received a single disciplinary infraction in 11 years of incarceration. He has completed 2 college degrees by correspondence. He has tutored fellow inmates in mathematics through the slot in his cell door. He is, Warden Nichols says carefully, choosing each word, one of the most compliant, consistent inmates I have encountered on this unit in my entire career. He closes the file without elaborating. He does not offer a personal opinion on guilt or innocence. That, he says firmly, is not his job. His job begins in 71 hours. The camera follows Corrections Officer D. Harris as he completes the morning welfare check. Harris has worked H Unit for 8 years. In that time, he has seen men arrive broken and leave in a transfer van or pine box. He knows every face on this corridor, every name, every behavioral pattern that signals deterioration. When Marcus Webb arrived on H Unit in 2013, Harris was the officer who processed him through intake. He remembers the moment with clarity. Most men cry when they come through that door, Harris says, walking the corridor without breaking stride. Some of them pray out loud. Some get angry, real angry. You had to be ready for that. Marcus just walked in, looked around the cell, sat down on the edge of the bunk, and folded his hands on his knees like he was sitting in a waiting room. Harris pauses outside cell 11. He glances through the narrow, reinforced window in the door. On the other side, Marcus Webb is seated at his small desk, writing. He is, Harris confirms without needing to check, always writing. Death row at H Unit is not like general population. There are no gang territories here, no yard politics, no contraband networks to navigate. Each man on this unit spends 23 hours a day inside a cell the size of a parking space. What there is, what inevitably develops on every death row in America, is a social structure built entirely on one currency, time served. The men who have been here longest carry a quiet, unspoken authority, not because they demand it, because they have survived long enough to become institutional fixtures. Raymond Doakes has been on H Unit for 16 years. He occupies cell 12, directly adjacent to Marcus Webb. The 2 men communicate through the shared ventilation duct in their shared wall. They have spoken through that vent every single day for the last 8 years. Doakes' own execution is scheduled 14 days after Marcus's. His final appeal was denied 2 months ago. He has stopped filing new motions. He has, in his own measured words, decided he is finished fighting the machinery. Every morning, Marcus Webb follows the same routine with unwavering precision. He rises at 5:30. He performs 100 push-ups on the cell floor. He reads for 1 hour. He writes letters for 30 minutes. He consumes whatever arrives through the door slot without comment or complaint. This morning, the routine encounters an interruption. A newly assigned corrections officer, 3 weeks on the unit, still learning the behavioral geography of this corridor, delivers the breakfast tray and makes a remark. It is delivered quietly enough that the documentary camera almost does not capture it. Something about how Webb should make the most of his eggs while he still has the opportunity. Marcus does not look up. He does not respond. He picks up his fork with the same unhurried deliberateness he uses for everything and begins to eat. Officer Harris, positioned further down the corridor, overhears it. He pulls the new officer aside immediately. The exchange is short and quiet. The younger man's face drains of color. Through the shared ventilation duct, Raymond Doakes taps twice on their shared wall. Their signal. You all right? Marcus taps back once. I'm all right. Marcus Webb's attorney, Claire Hodges, has been fighting this case for 6 years. She took it on a pro bono basis after encountering references to the intercepted letter rumor through a legal advocacy network. Today's session is their last formally scheduled consultation before the execution date. She lays out the papers. 11 years of appeals, every one denied. The letter, which Marcus still has not been permitted to see, sits at the center of an escalating legal dispute over prisoner male rights. Marcus listens without interrupting. He asks 3 questions. All 3 are precise. All 3 are grounded in legal procedure. He takes notes in his small, exact handwriting. When the meeting concludes, he stands, buttons the top button of his prison shirt, a habit Claire has noted at the end of every single consultation, and turns back to her once. Whatever happens on Friday, he says quietly, I need you to make certain my sister is not in the witness chamber. Claire nods. He steps back through the door. For a moment, the consultation room is entirely silent. At exactly noon on Wednesday, 60 hours before the scheduled execution, Warden Nichols receives a telephone call. The documentary camera is present in the room. The call lasts 4 minutes and 12 seconds. The warden's expression does not change during any part of it. The call originates from the Oklahoma Attorney General's office. The AG's team is aware of the letter. They have been aware for several days. Their instruction to the warden is precise. Do not release the letter to the inmate until further notice. The matter is under active review. What the warden does not know, what nobody inside H Unit is aware of yet, is that Gerald Briggs, the detective who wrote that letter, has contacted 3 separate journalists in the past 7 days. He has provided at least one of them with a full copy of its contents. By tomorrow morning, it will be on the front page of 2 state newspapers. The warden sets the phone down. He sits with his hands flat on his desk for a moment. Then he calls his deputy in to begin the formal execution readiness review. Officer Harris makes a decision at 1:15 in the afternoon that he will spend the remainder of his career questioning. He has read the letter. As senior officer on the unit, he was given access to a copy when it arrived 3 weeks ago. He knows what it contains. He has stood outside cell 11 every working day for 8 years. He has watched Marcus Webb through that narrow window through every variation of circumstance this building produces. And today, 60 hours before the execution, he cannot reconcile what he knows with what he is being directed to do. He checks the corridor in both directions. He bends down to the slot in the door of cell 11. Webb, he says. Quiet. Even. There's a letter. It arrived 3 weeks ago. I cannot give it to you, but I need you to know it exists. And I need you to contact your lawyer today. Not tomorrow. Today. He straightens, smooths the front of his uniform jacket, walks away down the corridor with the same measured pace he always uses. He does not look back. He already knows what this moment will cost him. Claire Hodges receives Marcus's call at 2:03 in the afternoon. He relays what Harris told him, not the contents of the letter, just the fact of its existence and its suppression. Claire's voice stays controlled. She has known about the letter for 3 weeks. She has been attempting to compel its disclosure through the courts during that entire period. Every motion has been blocked. She tells Marcus, carefully, aware the call is recorded, to submit a formal written request for his mail. In writing. Today. What she cannot tell him over a monitored prison line is the full picture. Because Gerald Briggs is not simply a retired detective troubled by conscience. He is the detective who personally supervised the forensic evidence chain in Marcus Webb's original trial. He was the officer responsible for the fingerprint processing protocol. And according to the affidavit that Claire Hodges has been holding for 6 days, one critical piece of that evidence, the fingerprint recovered from the weapon, was not processed incorrectly due to error. It was processed incorrectly by deliberate design. Someone, in 2012, made a choice. At 3:30, Marcus Webb sits with his back against the wall beneath the shared vent and tells Raymond Doakes everything. He speaks in his usual manner, deliberate, economical, no word wasted. He has learned over 11 years to say exactly what he means. The world outside may be accelerating, lawyers, journalists, attorneys general all moving at once. But inside Cell 11, time operates by entirely different physics. Doakes listens without a single interruption. When Marcus finishes, the duct is silent for a long time. "You think it's real?" Doakes asks finally. "I think Briggs is dying," Marcus says. "I think dying men don't have the energy left to keep lying." Another silence. "My lawyer called yesterday," Doakes says, slower now. "Told me I should stop expecting a miracle." That's his word. Miracle. A pause. Funny word for a letter that already exists in a filing cabinet somewhere. Marcus presses his palm flat against the wall, the shared concrete between their two cells. A gesture they have both understood for years. Doakes presses his palm against his side. Neither man speaks again for a very long time. At 5 o'clock precisely, Chaplain Father Patrick O'Brien requests an emergency meeting with Warden Nichols. Father O'Brien has served as chaplain at this facility for 19 years. He has sat beside 14 men in their final hours inside this building and administered last rites to every one of them. He has never, in 19 years, requested a meeting with a warden on the evening before an execution countdown. He sits across from the warden and delivers one sentence. If that letter contains what people at every level of this institution now believe it contains, and we proceed to execute Marcus Webb on Friday morning, this institution will carry that with it permanently. Warden Nichols listens in full. He folds his hands on the desk. He explains, with evident respect, that the matter under discussion is a legal determination, not a pastoral one, and that the execution protocol will continue until a court of competent jurisdiction orders otherwise. Father O'Brien stands. He places one hand on the edge of the desk. "I have given last rites to 14 men in this building," he says. "I will not do so for a 15th if I have reasonable cause to believe the state is making a catastrophic error." He walks out. The warden does not call him back. By 7 o'clock Wednesday evening, H Unit is operating under a pressure that every experienced officer can feel but none will explicitly name. 3 news vans have established positions outside the prison perimeter. The story about the letter broke online, not on the front page as anticipated, but faster, in fragments, spreading across social platforms with a velocity that traditional news cannot match. The administration building switchboard has been fielding calls since 4 in the afternoon without interruption. 2 of the jurors from Marcus Webb's 2013 trial have spoken to journalists. One has said publicly she wants to speak with investigators. One has said, on the record, that she would have voted differently. Inside Cell 11, Marcus Webb is aware of none of this. There is no television, no radio, no telephone, no access to the outside world beyond whatever Officer Harris chooses to communicate. His world is 9 feet by 6 feet and the voice that comes through the ventilation duct. Harris arrives for the evening welfare check. He looks through the cell door window. Marcus is lying on his bunk, eyes fixed on the ceiling, utterly still. Harris stands at that window for 37 seconds. Then he walks away. He cannot find the words to tell him. The world outside these walls is watching. At 9:04 in the evening, a fax arrives at the prison from the Oklahoma Attorney General's office. 2 pages. A formal executive directive. The execution of Marcus Webb will proceed as scheduled at 6 o'clock Friday morning. No stays have been granted. No emergency hearings have been authorized. The matter will not be reconsidered at this stage. The letter from Gerald Briggs, the directive states, does not satisfy the legal threshold required to establish grounds for a stay under current statute. The fingerprint evidence referenced in the letter was examined during the original trial and scrutinized across 3 subsequent appeal hearings. The matter has been adjudicated at every available level. The warden reads the facts at his desk. He then initiates the full formal execution protocol. The execution team is formally notified. Medical personnel are confirmed and rusted. The witness list is reviewed and authorized. There are no further procedural steps available inside this building. In Cell 11, 200 feet away through concrete and steel, Marcus Webb turns off his cell light at 9:30 exactly, the same time he has extinguished it every night for 11 years. Tomorrow will be his last full day alive. At 11 o'clock Wednesday night, Claire Hodges files an emergency motion in the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals. It is the fourth such emergency filing in 3 weeks. But this one carries something the previous 3 did not. Attached to this motion is a sworn and notarized affidavit from Gerald Briggs himself, signed 2 days prior, in which Briggs states under oath that specific physical evidence in the Marcus Webb trial was falsified under the direction of his supervising detective. The statement is explicit. The signature is authenticated. The clerk's office receives the filing at 11:47. Under emergency judicial protocol, a duty judge is contacted and briefed. At 12:15 Thursday morning, now the last full day before the execution, Claire Hodges sits alone in the consultation room with her phone on the table in front of her, waiting. She has done everything correctly. She has filed everything procedurally. The affidavit is genuine. The argument is sound. She has also been here before. 3 times she has sat in a room with a filing she was certain would succeed. 3 times, the court said no. The phone sits silent on the table. She does not sleep. Before we go any further, because it is now past midnight, we are fewer than 6 hours from Thursday morning, and Claire Hodges is sitting alone in a consultation room waiting for a phone that is not ringing. If you are not yet subscribed to this channel, do it right now. This is exactly the kind of story we exist to tell. The cases where something went wrong inside a system that was built to prevent things going wrong. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and share this episode with one person who needs to see it. Now back to H Unit. Because at 1:17 in the morning, something is about to happen on this corridor that nobody on duty tonight was prepared for. At 1:17 Thursday morning, Raymond Doakes begins to scream. Not in anger, not in fear of anything specific or immediate. The 2 nurses and 3 officers who respond will each later struggle to find an adequate word for it. It sits somewhere between grief and total internal collapse. Doakes is found pressed against the back wall of cell 12, both hands covering his face, breathing in rapid, uncontrolled bursts. It is not, as it turns out, about his own upcoming execution. The responding night officer initially assumes it is. He calls for medical staff. Father O'Brien is woken in his on-site quarters and arrives within 6 minutes. Through the shared ventilation duct, Marcus Webb has been awake the entire time. He does not call out. He presses his face close to the vent opening. "Ray," he says. "Firm. Clear. No urgency. No panic. Ray, look at the wall. Find the crack above your light fitting. The crack you told me about. Look at it. Tell me what shape it makes." Through broken, uneven breathing, eventually, Doakes answers. "Looks like a bed," he says. "That's right," Marcus says. "I've been looking at my crack for 8 years. Mine looks like a bird too. Keep looking at it. Don't look away." At 2:30 in the morning, the administration duty officer receives an urgent call from the state capitol. The 10th Circuit's duty judge, having reviewed Claire Hodges' emergency filing, has forwarded Gerald Briggs's affidavit directly to the Attorney General's office for an emergency responsive statement. The AG has 4 hours to reply before the judge will issue a ruling. By 2:45, the warden has been called back to the facility. He left at midnight in civilian clothes. He arrives in civilian clothes. Senior attorneys from the AG's office are reportedly driving to the prison perimeter. News vehicles have multiplied to 6. None of this penetrates cell 11. Marcus Webb has spent the last 90 minutes talking Raymond Doakes back from the edge of collapse through a ventilation opening the width of a paperback book. Medical staff have been present in the corridor. Father O'Brien has positioned himself outside cell 12. But it is the voice coming through the shared concrete wall, calm, unhurried, unchanged, that has been doing the actual work. Officer Harris, who drove back to the facility without being called, stands in the dark corridor outside cell 11. On the other side of that door, a man who may be innocent has fewer than 28 hours remaining. Harris stands there for a long time. At 4 o'clock Thursday morning, Marcus Webb stops performing. He has maintained composure for 11 years with a discipline that has confounded institutional psychologists, earned the private respect of corrections officers, and quietly broken the hearts of every person who knew him before these walls. He has done his push-ups. He has read his books. He has written his letters. He has tapped on the wall and folded his hands and waited with the particular patience of a man who has made peace with waiting. At 4 a.m, 16 hours from the scheduled execution, he sits down on the floor of his cell, back against the bunk frame, and cries, quietly, for approximately 20 minutes. He makes no sound that would carry beyond the cell door. The documentary camera, positioned in the corridor, captures only the faint light beneath the door, which does not move. He cries for his sister Lisa, who has taken a bus from Tulsa every month for 11 years and sat across from him through reinforced glass and has never, not once, in 132 visits, stopped telling him she believes him. He cries because he genuinely does not know, in the dark of 4 a.m, whether she is right. At 5:30 Thursday morning, Marcus Webb stands up. He washes his face at the small corner sink. He performs 100 push-ups on the cell floor, the same 100 he has performed every morning for 11 years. He makes his bunk with institutional precision. He sits at his desk and writes a single letter, which he seals and slides into the outgoing mail slot. It is addressed to his sister, Lisa. He will later say, in the only formal interview he gives across the full 72 hours, that the decision made at 5:30 that morning was, in its own way, simple. He decided that he would not spend his last day on earth waiting for other people to determine whether his life had meaning. He had spent 11 years building a case for his own humanity inside a system whose procedural function was to reduce him to a docket number. He was not going to stop now. He knocked on the cell door and asked Officer Harris, through the slot, for a pen with sufficient ink for extended writing. Harris brought him 3 pens. Marcus Webb sat down and began writing the most significant document of his life. At 8:04 Thursday morning, Claire Hodges walks into the consultation room. Her face communicates everything before she speaks a single word. The 10th Circuit denied the emergency motion at 7:49. The AG filed its responsive statement at 6:15. The duty judge reviewed it. The court held that the Briggs affidavit, however significant, did not satisfy the procedural threshold for overturning a final conviction at this stage of proceedings. The execution will proceed. Marcus listens without movement. Claire Hodges is crying. She is making every effort not to. She has been awake for 30 hours. Marcus places his hand, palm upward, on the table in front of him, still separated from Claire by the partition glass. She places her hand flat against her side of the partition, above his. I wrote a statement, Marcus says. I do not want it used as a final declaration at the execution. I want it released publicly today, while I am still alive and able to be the author of it. Claire nods. She is writing. Also, Marcus says, his voice entirely level, I have one more legal idea. And for it to work, I need you to be willing to do something professionally uncomfortable. She looks up. Tell me, she says. By 10 o'clock Thursday morning, Marcus Webb's written statement has been released publicly through Claire Hodges' office. It is 9 pages long. It was written between 5:30 and 8 o'clock that morning in a 6-by-9-foot cell on a pen borrowed from a corrections officer. In it, Marcus does not argue his case in legal terms. He does not enumerate trial irregularities or cite evidentiary failures. He writes, instead, about the 11 years, about the push-ups on the cell floor, about the crack in the ceiling paint that looks, at a certain angle, like a bird in flight, about the bus his sister takes every month without fail, about mathematics tutored through a door slot, about the voice through a ventilation duct at 1 a.m. that sounds like the closest thing to human connection a man can find in this place. He writes one line that runs across the front page of every major state newspaper by midday. I do not know what justice looks like from inside this cell, but I know exactly what it feels like to be treated as a human being by people who are not required to do so. Outside the prison perimeter, the crowd has grown to several hundred people. 3 former jurors are now publicly calling for a suspension of the execution. The telephone at the governor's office has not stopped ringing since 8 o'clock. At 2:17 Thursday afternoon, 15 hours and 43 minutes before the scheduled execution of Marcus Webb, The private line on Warden Nichols's desk rings. The call is from the governor's office. It lasts 6 minutes. When the call ends, Warden Nichols summons his deputy. He calls the execution team's supervisor. He calls the medical officer. He speaks to each one of them in the same controlled, steady tone he uses for every communication inside this building, regardless of content. A 30-day stay of execution has been granted by executive order. Not an exoneration, not a release, not an acquittal, a stay. 30 days for the Attorney General's office to conduct a full independent forensic review of the evidence raised in the Briggs affidavit. 30 days for the relevant courts to reconvene on the question of evidentiary integrity. 30 days that, 8 hours ago, did not legally exist. Officer Harris hears the announcement transmitted over the unit communication radio. He walks directly to cell 11. He bends to the door slot for the second time in 2 days. "Webb," he says. His voice breaks. It is the first time in 8 years that it has. 30 days. Marcus Webb does not respond immediately. The cell is silent. Then, quietly, tell Ray. Lisa Webb arrives at the prison at 3:30 Thursday afternoon. She has been on the road since 5 o'clock that morning, before the stay was announced, before the governor's office made its call, because she had made a private decision that she was not going to allow her brother to die without being present in the same building. The front desk officer tells her about the stay as she is signing in. She is to sit down. In the visitation room, Marcus is already seated when she is brought through. For the first time across 132 monthly visits in 11 years, neither of them speaks for an extended period. Lisa presses her palm flat against the partition glass. Marcus places his hand on his side, opposite hers. What the camera captures in this room is not triumph. It is not relief in any uncomplicated sense. It is exhaustion of a very specific and devastating variety, the exhaustion of two people who have been fighting the same battle for 11 years and have been handed 30 more days. Not freedom, not vindication, just 30 more days, and who are choosing, in this particular moment, to receive that as if it were a gift. At 4 o'clock, through the ventilation duct back in H unit, Raymond Doakes taps on the shared wall. "Told you," he says. Miracles are real words. What Sir Trevor McDonald discovers during a late afternoon conversation with a retired corrections officer, one who served on H unit during the year of Marcus Webb's initial incarceration, adds a dimension to this story that the formal investigation has not yet reached. The officer, who speaks under condition of anonymity and keeps his face away from the camera, describes a visit to the unit in the weeks following Marcus Webb's arrival in 2013. The visitor was Gerald Briggs. The visit was unofficial. It was not logged in the facility register, not cleared through formal channels. Briggs sat in a staff restroom for approximately 40 minutes before his supervisor, who did not know the purpose of the visit, quietly arranged for him to be escorted out. He seemed, the officer says, weighing his words, like a man who had done something he was still having an argument with himself about. He drank 2 cups of coffee and said almost nothing the entire time. Before leaving, Briggs asked one question to nobody in particular. Is he doing all right in there? Nobody knew who Briggs was or why he was asking. Nobody answered him. What nobody in that room could know was that Gerald Briggs would spend the next 11 years, every single one of them, asking himself the same question in private. In the weeks and months that follow the broadcast of this documentary, a sequence of events unfolds. The independent forensic review of the fingerprint evidence, conducted by a 3-person team with no prior connection to the original case, determines that the processing irregularities described in the Briggs affidavit are consistent with deliberate mishandling rather than procedural error. The finding is referred to a special state prosecutor. Officer D. Harris is suspended pending an investigation into his disclosure to Marcus Webb through the cell door slot. He is later reinstated with a formal written reprimand. He retires from the corrections service 6 months after the documentary airs. He does not give interviews. Gerald Briggs, 71 years old and in the final stages of a terminal illness, provides a full formal statement to investigators under oath. He does not survive to see the case resolved. Father O'Brien continues in his role as chaplain. He visits Marcus Webb every week throughout the review period without exception. Raymond Doakes receives a 120-day stay of execution after a law clinic. Watching the Webb case closely, identifies parallel irregularities in the evidence used in his own conviction. Lisa Webb continues to take the bus. Every month, without exception. Sir Trevor McDonald's closing narration is not a verdict. It is not an assertion of innocence or confirmation of guilt. It is, as the finest documentary journalism always is, a question left deliberately open, because the honest answer requires more honesty than any institution in this story has yet demonstrated. He stands in the now empty corridor of H Unit. The cells are dark. The ventilation hisses. The lights hum their low institutional hum. In 48 hours inside this unit, McDonald says quietly, I did not find what I arrived expecting to find. I did not find men who had surrendered their sense of existing as human beings. I found men who had developed, inside the most deliberately dehumanizing environment that a modern democratic state constructs, an almost radical commitment to one another's dignity. He pauses. He looks at the cell doors. Marcus Webb may yet be exonerated by the process. He may not. The system will proceed at whatever pace it determines appropriate, as it always does. But what I cannot unknow, standing in this corridor, is that we make decisions in courtrooms in a matter of days that we then spend years and decades refusing to revisit. He turns and looks directly into the camera. That should concern every one of us who lives outside these walls, because the walls are not as far away as we prefer to believe. Marcus Webb is still on H Unit. The forensic review is ongoing. The special prosecutor has not yet issued findings. The 30 days are running. If this story kept you watching from that first cold open to this moment, then you already understand what this channel is. This is where we go inside the walls that most people never see, and we stay there long enough to understand what is actually happening. Subscribe if you haven't already. Leave a comment below with one word, just one word, that describes how you feel about what happened in that building. We read every single one. And before you leave, the next episode on this channel goes inside a different institution, a different system, a different set of walls. And it begins with a story that makes this one look straightforward. Click it. You already know you want to.